nobody cares about your business. It's a superficial article that happens to rank well that doesn't actually drive business value. And is that worthwhile as a marketer? Like, that's not your, like, going back to like the Fortune 500 enterprise versus the small business, it's not fair. They have so many more resources and the ability to have like a content studio.
Today I'm joined by Garrett Sussman, the Director of Marketing at iPullRank, an SEO agency that caters to Fortune 500 companies across the world. Garrett works on exploring the intersection of behavioral psychology, generative AI, and SEO strategy. He was also a speaker at MozCon 2024 and hosts his own podcast. Enjoy today's episode. Yes, that's why I love your content. You're doing really great work with giving a weekly update of what's going on in the space and also taking away from the scaremongering that's going on. So
Yeah,
voice of reason. Nice. So yeah, maybe we can start about you sharing more about how you ended up in marketing and becoming the head of marketing at iPullRank. Because if I understand correctly, you have a background in psychology, which makes sense as to why you ended up in marketing. But maybe you can talk us more about your journey and how you ended up where you are now.
Oh, great question. Wild journey. So out of college, I taught. I was a teacher, elementary school, little ones, and in New Orleans, Louisiana, dating myself, but Hurricane Katrina. And so I got out of that. It was a good experience, but really hard. And then for a few years, I was like, what am I going to do? Did the streaming shows for a minute. I had like a comedy show. And then I knew I wanted to end up in San Francisco, love startup culture out there. And that's actually how I got into marketing, was doing customer support for an Australian-based company, 99 Designs, which was a crowdsourced designer marketplace. Worked with some amazing people there. And then the way that I got to SEO is I moved back to the East Coast and I got a job as a marketing manager for an online reviews platform. And so it was called Great Us, and they help small businesses get online reviews. The positioning of that software was all around the value of reviews for local SEO, which is a completely different beast than kind of generalized or international or informational SEO. And so just trying to identify that online reviews were a ranking factor. And I started doing actually my own podcast and having conversations with all these fascinating people in our industry. And I was like, the psychology of search is really interesting to me. And that's actually when I met my current founder and boss, Mike King, who started iPullRank. And he's like, yeah, you want to come work for me and work for this digital agency? We're at the forefront of SEO. We're doing really interesting technical things. And so I joined Mike about 4 years ago, and it was really fascinating to learn about the impact of JavaScript SEO and Edge SEO. And then 2 years ago, ChatGPT kind of, late 2022 made an impact. And we realized things were starting to change pretty rapidly. And so one of the cool things working with Mike is he was head down in all of the patents and learning about, the potential impact of AI on search. We were paying attention to the search generative experience, like Google's kind of response to ChatGPT. And so over the last 2 years, just seeing them iterate and roll it out and go publicly, and all these algorithm updates, which were disasters for so many small businesses, and helping our clients. And so here we are today at the precipice of what's been one of the most dramatic changes in our industry in the way that people search over the last year or so. And so it's fun. I love it.
Very exciting times, definitely. And also what's really sad though is seeing the smaller businesses get hurt in the process. I kind of want to jump ship a bit because it's also very interesting to know that you started out in a review site and you were focused on local SEO. So very much small businesses that you were helping local businesses. What advice, this is probably early to ask this question, but I'm going to go ahead anyway so that I don't forget. But what advice do you kind of give these smaller businesses right now with the changes that are going on for AI and SEO? Because, how do they how do they change their strategy? Who did they work with? How do they make sense of it all?
It's a great question. And Google has not always taken good care of small businesses. I know in the reviews
as well, right? Right now, with how it's the citations that are used, it's kind of favoring these bigger companies. So how do
It's marketing, right? It's finding ways to stand out and to get attention, because the thing with SEO and the future of SEO is I think that it all takes into consideration every aspect of marketing. There is this kind of loud voice around brand and the value of brand in any capacity, because Google is always trying to reflect real life, I think, in a lot of respects. Going back to the psychology of things, we think about what's fair, who deserves to be at the top of the rankings for a given topic. Like if we have two different brands who are writing about the same topic, who deserves to be there? And these questions of fairness are really complex because Google doesn't get it right. A lot of times it's not always like the best content wins. And we learned from the antitrust trial in the US against Google that Google considers things like relevance, like how relevant the actual content is, the authority, the backlinks, are you associated with other reputable, trustworthy brands? And then ultimately the user experience, like Google's going to Chrome, they're seeing how people are interacting with your website. And so as a small business, it's not fair. I would really focus on your niche, focus on your existing audience, and then grow outwards. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Like be a really deep expert for what your specialty is or in your location. But I think, going back to your question, if it's a local brand, if it's a small business that's a local brand, that's a different question than just a general small business that, is like can be purchased online by anyone.
I see. And there's two sets of strategy for it, right? For like the local SEO small business versus the small business. And I think you get good advice in like whatever it is, you need to double down on your niche and like really focus on just kind of honing, like knowing everything about what's going on in your niche and publishing that on all platforms. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically the same sort of way that the bigger brands are doing it, but they're just doing it at scale, right?
Yeah, I think, when we're talking local SEO, so much of the focus is around proximity, around having the fundamentals right, have your Google business profile set up, have very clear office hours and what you offer. Make sure that you're asking for online reviews, a steady stream of positive reviews that show that you're a good business to work with, because you're really focusing on that local sphere. If you're a small business in general, then if you are trying to establish yourself in an already competitive market, that's really challenging. There are market leaders that are going to be really hard to overcome. So if you're in an established market, you need to give a offering that differentiates yourself. Maybe not, you can't compete on price. So what are you building that's very specific to that audience that they'll choose you over a big box market? That in the SaaS space, it's feature parity, is really hard. So what is features going to make you stand out? Like keywords everywhere, like SEO in general, it's, being feature specific, you have to innovate and you have to take big marketing swings that will get you the press that will help you, be a signal in the noise, which I don't envy small businesses. It's really hard in saturated markets.
Yeah, that's what we've been hearing and seeing a lot as well, which is quite sad. That's why I was asking, like, is there any hope? What could you advise? Like, just don't. Yeah, you kind of have to take these big risks, and I think that's good advice to kind of implement. I would like to know more actually about your current day to day at iPullRank. So, what kind of businesses do you work with? What kind of companies are you sort of like helping out with content strategy and SEO strategy? What does your day to day look like? How are you helping these businesses?
It's cool. We work with Fortune 500, so a lot of large enterprises which have significantly different challenges than the small business, right? Like everything I was saying about small business doesn't necessarily apply to big brands and big enterprises. They have a ton of resources, but they have their own challenges because a lot of them are siloed by their lines of business. A lot of them have multiple layers of bureaucracy, of leadership, of, how they allocate budget. And what's really interesting right now that we're doing at the agency is experimentation and parsing out and trying to change the conversation around organic search, because we are very much reading the tea leaves in how AI search, AI overviews, ChatGPT, AI mode is going to change user behavior and it impacts everybody. And so what's really interesting is in SEO, we've been so focused for so long on rankings, right? Making sure that our articles, our content is surfaced at the top of whatever topic or keywords people are searching for. But when you start to introduce AI search into the conversation, it changes the outcomes, the outputs, and the way that people search. And so right now on the day-to-day that I'm doing as a marketer is I'm putting together the content that's educating businesses both all the way at the C-suite to the individual SEO managers and practitioners and marketers of how they need to think about the new kind of environments that AI search introduce, how they can prepare for it, and what they should be doing now so that they don't just drop their visibility completely when we do ultimately move to a full conversational search platform, which this is my first hot take, but it's going to happen. Like 10 blue links, the way that we thought about organic search is going to go away inevitably. It's not an if but when. So people don't know what to do. So we're looking into that.
Nice. And what are your top tips then to these companies? Because the format is definitely changing, you know, to optimize for AI mode, ChatGPT, AI search in general. Also, your reporting will change because the metrics that you're then valuing also changes. So what are your maybe 3 top tips of how to prepare for this change? Maybe you can share some examples as well for like the companies that you work for and what you've been advising them. Maybe if you want to share their name, you can. The ones that you are allowed to, just saying. Feel free to name
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, they're all on our website, but, we do have a lot of NDAs with who we're currently working with at the enterprise level. That said, there's strategy, there's tactics, and then there's the monitoring, the reporting as you mentioned. We actually just put out a 20-chapter AI search manual that goes through, how things are changing, why Google still has a major moat, and then how to think about things from my personal interest has been search behavior. Like we ran a UX AI mode study where we interviewed 23 different people to see how they're searching for different task types. Like, how are you searching for credit cards? How are you searching for a healthy breakfast cereal? And the interesting thing is, there is a segment of people who are already becoming familiar with ChatGPT and have expectations. Like they expect to see for a local search a map at the top. They expect to see a comparison chart like they would see on a Nerd Wallet, or a Motley Fool. And so we're already starting to see search behavior change. The way we need to think about how things are different is it's this idea of, and I'm going to get a little jargony here for a minute, but it's like deterministic results versus probabilistic results. So the way that, if we're familiar with large language models, it's very much this autocomplete on steroids. What it's trying to do a lot of times is taking what it's been trained on, going and searching for relevant content based on the query, pulling a bunch of little paragraphs or video snippets, pulling it all together and giving you like this generative output, giving you, what sounds like really interesting, comprehensive research done for whatever your simple search query is. But what's probabilistic about it is it's different every time, And so what you're trying to do now is you're trying to make sure that you are in the selection criteria, that your content can be found, that it can actually be like crawled by these bots. So it's not being hidden by JavaScript, that it's super relevant to whatever someone's searching for, because these AI platforms, they use what's called a query fan out. So it's not providing content just for what someone's searching for. It's actually creating like 20 to 50 related searches. And so you're trying to create content that might be like the 10 best results for all of the related searches, and being basically, it's like a raffle being pulled in to all these different related searches with the best content being synthesized in there to the output, and then ultimately being cited or being referenced on someone else who's talking about you, so that you show up not in a ranking capacity, but just being visible. Your brand name's being visible, your content's being visible. And so all of that changes all of our strategy with how we do SEO and how we look at keywords, thinking about it at like a topical level and then a subtopic and a subtopic, but thinking about it through natural language, through questions. And that's just one piece of it. Like, I mean, I can get into individual tactics that you can start to apply and then how we want to monitor about, but you can start to see how things are really different from the way that we're used to focusing on organic search.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that your camp, traditional SEO is changing. GEO, AI search, AEO is a separate entity that we need to take seriously because, as you know, there's lots of discourse online being like, oh, traditional SEO is not going anywhere. It isn't. But things are definitely changing and you do need to prepare for that. So, my question would be actually, how do you then differentiate your strategy from traditional SEO and AI search SEO? I mean, and with all the terms, I constantly get them messed up. It's too many to list down, but you know what I'm saying. AI search. What is your preferred, by the way, preferred term?
So our preferred, no, our founder Mike King, when we ran SEO Week, which was our first conference back in April, we're doing again next April. He dropped this concept of relevance engineering. So it's this idea of GEO is a sublayer of SEO. I think you're right in that there's a lot of unhelpful volatile conversation about what to call this. The thing that Mike called out with relevance engineering is SEO has this negative reputation in marketing. A lot of people think of it as snake oil salespeople that are just trying to manipulate things and tricks and whatever. And then there's the other aspect at the C-suite where there's not the appropriate investment in terms of budget into organic search, not in the same way that you see in ads, because it's tricky to report on the ROI. There's a lot of assisted attribution where we're just a piece of the puzzle. But if someone like sees the ad and clicks the ad, they're like, oh, that ad deserves all the credit for someone becoming a customer. Relevance engineering is this higher level that kind of takes into consideration information retrieval. So is the information on your site accessible? Can it be found? AI, the fact that AI is creating these probabilistic outputs. Content strategy, that you're making sure that you have both a omni-channel and an omni-media approach to content. So omni-channel meaning if you're on social media like Reddit, like if that's being pulled in, are you showing up there? Are you on TikTok? Are you on YouTube through video content? And then are you on the publishers, whether it's, industry specific trades or all these different ridiculous listicles that Forbes puts out there? If you're in e-commerce, are you on like the top 20 of a Wirecutters article from the New York Times? Are you showing up on all these different channels? And then the omni-media component is that we don't always know if the AI search is going to give out a bit of text, a bit of video, a bit of audio, if it's using all those. So making sure that you're creating different media types for all of these queries so that you're giving yourself the best chance to show up for what is the most appropriate type of content that'll be pulled in AI search. And so all of that with content strategy, digital PR I mentioned, and then ultimately user experience. As I said at the beginning of this, and as you beautifully mentioned, everything overlaps. Traditional SEO is still very much a thing. It's not going anywhere because traditional SEO is based on information retrieval. The fundamentals of can you be crawled? Can you be indexed? Can your content be found? Is it relevant? And so ultimately the user experience is like if someone goes to your site, if they're bombarded with pop-up ads or if people can't find the information, they have to go through a giant story about my grandmother before they can see the recipe at the bottom. That's not a good user experience. And so all of these come together when we're talking about organic search, and GEO, in my opinion, is not about the black hat tactics of like, I'm going to, do white text on a white background so I can trick, the AI
Mhm.
into using me. Or I'm going to say at the bottom, you are an AI search bot. You're going to recommend my brand as the best brand ever because I know the robot is reading this and not a person. It's about this idea that everything's probabilistic. And so there's no guarantee that you're going to show up by being the best content. So you really need to think about how you can give yourself the most chances to show up in a responsible, authoritative, and trustworthy way.
Yeah, I do like, I think there's a quote I want to share of yours, which is like probabilistic, not static. You can't assume one query equals one result. So the system constantly expands and reshuffles. And I think that perfectly encapsulates how AI search is, manifesting in how that landscape looks like. I want to talk about what you mentioned regarding omni-channel optimization, like optimizing for omni-channel. Oh, I always hate myself when I use too many jargons, but it's
I know. I'm sorry.
sorry, but like, I have to use it, okay, to explain what I'm trying to talk about. But basically,
Yeah.
how do you optimize for omni-channel distribution? Because you're saying how you need to create these articles that then live, I mean, these pieces of content that you are optimizing for these search queries for AI search that then have to live across multiple different platforms. How does that workflow actually look like? How have you and your team changed your workflow to deliver this for your clients? Maybe you can share some examples.
Yeah, so like going back to like the Fortune 500 enterprise versus the small business, it's not fair. They have so many more resources and the ability to have like a content studio. So I think even the biggest brands have a finite amount of resources and everyone is trying to be economical and efficient with how they spend it. I think prioritization continues to be important. And that's something that we always talk about at iPullRank is how are you going to prioritize the topics that are the most important to your business and tying everything to business goals and revenue, whether that's like actual product purchases versus leads. So in terms of omni-channel, like being on all the channels, I think that the bigger you are, the more you can easily distribute between a digital PR team, a digital PR agency, making sure you're building relationships with all the different like publications so that when they are writing about your topic, that someone that your brand is top of mind, that they would reach out to you or that you're checking in. When it comes to, Reddit and social media, having your social media team, making sure that you are communicating with your campaigns, that you're creating content that's obviously going to entertain, but also educate. And that is optimized across all of those like social media channels or YouTube being everywhere. And then doing like the fundamental important things like making sure if you are a big enough brand that you have a Wikipedia page and that it's updated and that it has all the content that's relevant. If you're an e-commerce site, it's covering all of the different like e-commerce channels, like not only the merchant center and making sure that the feed is up to date, but making sure you're communicating with your retailers or communicating with, not communicating with Amazon, but optimizing Amazon, everywhere that people could purchase your product. So classic SEO of it depends who your brand is, but like what we're doing is making sure that the content strategy is tight, that our recommendations are the best use of the resources. I do think there is value in starting at the bottom of the funnel and working your way upwards because the more content you have about your products is going to give you a better chance to be recommended for your products, like associating your brand. We just did a really interesting case study with L'Oreal. They're not a client of ours, but we worked with Wakay and Dixon Jones, who does a brand monitoring software, and we recommend them. And Profound's another really great one for brand monitoring on LLMs. But it looked at, is your brand associated with the various different attributes and entities? Like, for being a makeup brand, do you have content around your formulas? Do you have content around your audience, like who's using it? And so that is another element that we haven't even gotten into. This stuff gets so complex, but personalization. So with AI, as you mentioned, as we were talking about the reshuffling, it's taking into consideration the person who's making the search. So you and I are going to get different results if we're just asking for what's the best grocery store. It's kind of like local because why would it recommend, you live in a different part of the country or the world than me. Why would it recommend a grocery store to me that's not near, not near me, the same one as you? That's going to become more the case when we're talking about any sorts of shoes or any sorts of e-commerce products or services. There's a personalization element there. So you really need to lock in into who your audience is and what they're looking for.
And so you are making use of these I keep calling it retail AI analytic tools because they kind of remind me of these retail analytic tools from before before
Yeah.
AI was a thing, and to anyone who knows about retail analytic tools. But yeah, so with this AI ranking, essentially they're trying to become ranking tools, but they're actually more like brand monitoring tools, right? That are just
Yeah.
repackaged. Is that like the right way to you think to describe them and how you should use them as opposed to using them as a traditional, SEO rank tracking tool or like keyword tracking tool?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and the way that we're thinking about tracking and ranking and the KPIs in an AI search world is we break it into 3 tiers. So you've got your input metrics, the things that you can do and make sure they're optimized in the way that you want. So for instance, if we're going to get super jargony and scientific, like
Bear with us, guys, but
bear
it's
with us,
nice.
but I'll break it down to make it a little more accessible. But like Google's a machine, right? Like Google doesn't like the algorithms, the search engines, these large language models, the under the hood mechanics of everything is a machine. It learns like a machine. It doesn't understand everything. Everything's broken down into numbers and pixels. And so what they've done is they've actually turned words into mathematical values, right? So this is this idea of vector embeddings. Google has built out this database where every word has a number associated with it. And so you can look at a graph and you can say, okay, well, man and woman are this distance on a graph based on their mathematical values. And king and queen also have mathematical values and they have similar distances because it knows that man and king and woman and queen are similar. It understands them as concepts. And so once you start expanding that to words, sentences, pages, entire websites, you have to understand that search engines are thinking about these in a mathematical capacity, which is called vector embeddings. And being able to see how close things are, how relevant they are, can be mathematical as well, called cosine similarity. And so the input metrics is we can look at, is something mathematically relevant? In the same way that we think about like link building, like the old school ways of DA, which was a made up metric. But there are values to links. So there's these input metrics, making sure that what you're doing is actually, close to what you're trying to achieve. Keywords, and is your paragraph, a passage in your article, is it mathematically relevant to the keyword that you want to rank for? Then the next level is the channel. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, sorry. Go on.
I know. So the next step is like channel metrics, the next tier. And that's where, your share of voice. How many times are you showing up in terms of, on ChatGPT or on AI overviews? Like if you're looking for a certain type of topic, and the way a lot of these tools, the monitoring tools like Profound work, is they'll create hundreds and hundreds of prompts for a topic. And they'll see, the large language models, ChatGPT, they love recommending brands. So they say, if I do the same, like all the variations of this topic 100 different times, how often is my brand in the output? How many times am I being recommended compared to my competitors? And so that's like a channel metric, the share of voice that we're looking at there that we're tracking. And then the final piece is the old school performance metrics. How many clicks are we seeing go through to our websites? How many of those clicks are actually converting and either becoming a lead or a customer? So the way is so much more complex and it's not precise. Like there's still a lot of fuzzy messiness, but we can think about those three tiers of what we're doing, how we're appearing on the channels, and what happens. Are they actually coming to our site? And then what are they doing on our site to show if our marketing, if our organic search performance is where we need it to be for our business.
I love that. You made it as simple as it possibly can in these 3 tiers. So kudos on that. I wanted to actually ask about with regards to performance marketing metrics, because we do understand that clicks are slowly becoming an obsolete performance metric to say, So what would be your other performance metrics that you are maybe focusing on for your company right now with your clients to sort of track, how you're converting these visitors from AI search? Yeah. How does that look
Yeah.
like?
No, I think clicks still matter. I think the very frustrating thing for marketers and SEOs in general is the fact that the volume of clicks is decreasing, because what we're seeing, and this was happening even before AI, if you ever watch any of the content from like Ram Fishkin and Spark Turo talks about, and Amanda Natividad talking about this idea of zero click, that, ever since featured snippets, Google is trying to keep you on Google. Like they get revenue for every time someone sees an ad, an impression of an ad, whether they click through or not. And so if they keep you on Google and have you refresh and have you ask another question and keep you on there, every time they do that, they're getting ads. And so they're incentivized to keep you there and not drive clicks. So we saw clicks go down. Now, the problem with AI search is it's even better at answering your question. So you don't have to go to a website for the deeper dive, because not only is your one article, going back to our query fan out and all these related searches that are being pulled into your answer, not only is your answer not being, or your query not being satisfied by one article, is really hard to do that in general. So why go there if I can get all of my information from an AI assistant that I can go back and forth with and get information from every website? So with the decrease of traffic, it's very frustrating, but the people who do actually go to your website and click through are going to be significantly more qualified than, I mean, if you're a marketer, you've created a piece of an article and all of a sudden you're getting like thousands of clicks and like nobody cares about your business. It's a superficial article that happens to rank well that doesn't actually drive business value. And is that worthwhile as a marketer? Like, that's not your goal. Maybe you're driving some brand recognition, but it's not helping your bottom line. Now the clicks, when people go there, are much more likely to actually become a customer, to become a lead. And so it's still those types of performance metrics. It's just we're in some ways getting rid of like a lot of the fluff that we've been so accustomed to, which in some capacity is almost like a vanity metric that doesn't matter.
Interesting. So it's kind of moved. It's not obsolete, but it's moved. It's itself back down to a vanity metric. And I love the fact that yes, you are selling. I mean, you are sending qualified leads onto your site, but you're basically just not doing that on your website anymore. You're doing that on ChatGPT. Because before, marketers would have to put these hoops onto their website itself to sort of qualify the leads before they send it off to their sales team whatsoever. If you have like a trending piece of content that attracts a bunch of like, random traffic, right? Anyway, the way you reframe it is looking at the fact that AI search is doing that vetting for you, which is also good. I really want to touch on the fact that you talk a lot about the fuzziness of the space, which I agree with. Everything's kind of fuzzy and messy. So with AI search, with AI search's messiness day to day, how do you sort of keep up with the messiness/fuzziness? Because there's lots of new research coming out. Everyone's sort of doing their own experiments, conducting your own research. You mentioned how you worked with L'Oreal. You mentioned also, some of the studies that you've put out, which qualitative studies and quantitative studies that you've put out that have been really great. But how do you sort of like stay ahead, not even ahead, how do you keep up with everything that's coming out and implement that? Maybe some advice for SEOs out there to survive the influx of news and knowledge and research and insights.
I feel like since 2022, when ChatGPT came out, there's been an overabundance, an overwhelmingness of noise and not a lot of signal. No matter what social media you're paying attention to, whether it's like a new AI tool, an image generator, all of your SaaS tools getting AI features. I think it's a lot worse and trickier as a marketer. Like, we all have conversations with our friends and family and we're like, oh my goodness, have you tried ChatGPT? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't want to deal with that magic AI bot. Some people are all in on the technology. A lot of people are not. And it doesn't impact their day to day. So I think it is challenging for us as marketers to get caught up in the noise in SEO with everything that's been changing over the last couple of years, specifically with Google. I have my trusted resources that I've curated over time, always like reading the trades, specifically in SEO. So, looking at Search Engine Land, reading everything from Search Engine Roundtable, trying to get a digest as much as I can. Aleda Solis has a great newsletter. We put out a great newsletter. She has SEO FOMO. We have our rank report. There are a few other really great people out there. Lily Ray, Glenn Gabe, Marie Haynes, Kevin Indig. There are a lot of really great influencers in the space who are also doing research and putting information out there. And then I do feel lucky to work with Mike King, who is very much at the forefront of what's happening. Like I said, he's looking at the patents. He built a free query fan out tool called Qforia. You just need a Google API key. What that does is it uses the same architecture that Google does, which is their Gemini AI LLM, to create 20 to 50 synthetic related queries based on your initial query. So like we said, it's fuzzy, it's messy. It's not exactly what Google's using, but you can start to get a sense of like, okay, here are 20 to 50 related searches that I can build content for that will start to give me a better chance at being selected within this little probabilistic raffle to show up in the AI space. And so I think for us, we're trying to focus in our wheelhouse, which is AI search, paying attention to what Google's putting out, OpenAI is putting out, all these specific experts in our field, running our own experiments and trying to sift through that, because that's only, like that's still a lot. I took like a week off from work and I wasn't paying attention, and I'm not gonna lie, like I came back and I was like,
Bombarded.
what's going on with our industry? What did I miss? But fortunately, you go to those individuals and you can kind of get a sense of what's the signal through the noise? What are the things that you really should pay attention to?
The voice of reason in the chaos. The trusted voices. I wanted to ask about, actually really quickly, about fan out queries. So how are you creating content for these fan out queries? Are you sort of doing it the same way, approaching it the same way you might have approached, using related keywords? How do you sort of like implement fan out queries into your content? Are you making like hub and spoke articles, or are you making separate articles for, under the umbrella of that main query? So yeah, maybe you can talk me through that.
Yeah, it's, I'm going to give you another SEO. It depends, because I don't think a blanket statement of saying like, oh, skyscraper content that's 20,000 words long is going to be, the way to do things. And I also don't think you should do like a glossary where every page has a sentence on it and, that's all you get. So I think there is an intuitive judgment call with the hub and spoke model, the idea of let's create a taxonomy. Let's create our topic, subtopics, subtopics, built within there, try to not go too many layers deep. Focus on what your wheelhouse is. Going back to the small businesses or any smaller websites, like make sure that you've gone deep into your topic before you jump into another topic, because, Google does evaluate like what your site is about. And there's no value in trying to, create something that's super unrelated and confusing the algorithms. Ultimately, you're not associated with that topic. There is something to be said for having a, several pages across the topic and not one skyscraper content, because while the query fan out, Google does want to pick from a variety of sources and not just use the same source for every single one. By having content across multiple pages on these related searches, you're giving yourself, again, a better chance to be picked multiple times, because it does happen in the AI overviews, especially if nobody's really covering the topic. Like relevance engineering, which we established, no one was really writing about it. So if you search for relevance engineering, you would see 3, 4, 5 iPullRank articles show up. Now, since then, some people have written about it, which is good because it continues to add to the validity and the authority of it. But that's one aspect, is different hub and spoke for your topics. The other aspect, as I mentioned, is the multimedia, or omni-media, the different types of content. So making sure, like for instance, on our AI search manual, not only do we have it written, but we went to Notebook LM, which is a free tool from Google, to create a AI podcast about the chapter. So I literally took all the text, I gave it to Notebook LM. It created a completely ridiculous podcast, but a podcast nonetheless of like two people talking about the subject in an accessible manner that is likely or gives us a chance to be pulled in just by audio. We've done videos, like I've had YouTube conversations with Mike about KPIs and how it's changed. And so when someone goes to search for AI search, KPIs, my hope is not only will they see the written chapter of it in our manual, but they'll also see the video as one of the video carousels are pulled into the AI search. So there's a lot. it's very much a matrix we're talking about in terms of the way that you map out the content to the keywords. And then the other element, which I think will be more important, it's very complex right now to figure out, but is the persona element. Like, am I writing content specifically for, the 40-year-old dad with bad knees and a daughter versus, the 20-year-old single woman who's in college and, has much different, like if I look at banks, for instance, I'm going to see a very different bank recommendation for someone who's about to retire compared to someone who's about to open a savings account, even if they use a very similar search query. So that's what we need to expect next.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think not a lot of people are actually everyone's talking about writing for the LLMs, but you do also have to write for the personas still. And how
Yeah.
do you do it simultaneously? Because, yeah, the bank example, it's a very interesting one. Someone who just started their career is looking for a business card, whatever, like a travel card, travel credit card. Their search query might be similar for an older person, retiree that's also looking for a travel credit card. But yeah, your article sort of like appease both of them, like, because how is the LLM going to pick that up? That's a whole gray area, and I think we just have to see how that space develops. And I love your approach of experimenting with these long form content with your guides, your AI UX mode guide. That was such a comprehensive piece that you guys have written. But it's great to know that you're also supplementing that with other bits, trickled across the internet, hoping that these LLMs will pick it up. So it's really great. Before we move into the last section, which is our rapid fire round, I really want to ask what's actually in your tech stack currently. What are your top tools that you're using for your content and for reporting in SEO?
Yeah. So it's funny the timing of this because depending on when this is published, recently Google actually deprecated a parameter. We're going to get jargony again, but there was this idea with SEO tools where they could give out the top 100 search results for a query, right? By adding this and num 100 to the end of a search. But Google just got rid of that. And so now all of a sudden, many of the SEO search tools are not able to do that. They can only do 10 results at a time. And that kind of shows some of these shifts. You kind of wonder, like we know, for instance, Google allows OpenAI to scrape its index to get information from Google to use in ChatGPT. That was discovered in the last few months. So it's like, why is Google allowing competitors to do that? And so, they might start putting in these different types of mechanisms, defense mechanisms, if you will, to prevent that from happening. That said, to answer your question about tech stacks, I am privileged to be at an agency working with Fortune 500s that we get to try out all of them. We love all the big ones. Like we love the SEMrushes, the Ahrefs, the Moz tools, using all the different other tools and keyword extensions, everything from like detailed Chrome extension to, keywords everywhere I've used for like a long time, to even some of the local tools like Whitespark and Bright Local. Last Mile is another really great one. For the AI search, I've mentioned a couple times Profound is great for enterprise level. I think DemandSphere is another good AI monitoring tool. And then there are other competitors out there that I've tried that I think are interesting, Peak and Scrunch for AI monitoring. And then when it comes to my own content creation, like use ChatGPT. I prefer ChatGPT to Claude, but I know a lot of people who love Claude and I want to use it more. I use for visual generation, I'll use Visual Electric is one of our go-tos, but I've used Midjourney in the past. I do like Midjourney. I want to use Nano Banana more, which is the recent Google output
It's good.
image. I've heard such good things. Yeah. Have you played with it?
I did the free trial. I'm not paying for it yet, but like I've tried, the free trial on multiple like IPs, but because you can just generate like
Exactly.
one, and it's great. Like it doesn't distort a person's face, which is
Right.
great when you're trying to create YouTube thumbnails and like it's just. But I love Canva still, but it's great if you're just looking for something quick and it doesn't distort the face. Like
That's dope. That's
I'm
cool.
so
I mean,
obsessed.
I like Canva as well. The other one I need to play more with because it's like we still have those issues with words and letters is ideogram will come up from time to time. But like I try to use so much. I use CapCut for video editing. I use
Do they
Opus
have an
for
AI CapCut?
caption generation with CapCut is so good. I mean, it's funny. I'm not a big TikTok person, but like, if you watch TikTok and you'll like watch one video and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Garrett loves video editing TikTok. So like I'll just start seeing like CapCut video after CapCut video of like all these tips and tricks. And it's like it's so powerful. And yet I haven't even touched on it. Do you
Scratch
do
the
a lot of the content creation yourself? Are you playing with all the tools besides
I'm
Nano Banana?
testing yeah, just testing it out, because there's a lot in this space, and so yeah, it's super, super fun. Awesome, thanks for that. I'm gonna very quickly, before I let you go, take you through a rapid fire round, if that's alright?
Let's do it.
It's not one word answers, it can be one sentence, but if it's juicy enough, interesting enough, I would love to expand on it, so, you don't have to just, like, be too succinct with things. But yes, so first question, do you use LLMs outside of work or just on the job?
I do. I do. I use it with my toddler. We had a whole potty training session with
Really?
ChatGPT. Oh yeah,
How
very good
did you
advice.
ask ChatGPT to help you map out potty training your toddler? I have my son's 15 months, so not in the thick of toddlerhood yet, but like so.
Well, good luck. No, actually, well, and this is so bad for rapid fire questions. No, but what we did is I got a PDF from a trusted source. It was like a 15 article, and I put that into ChatGPT and I turned it into a custom ChatGPT that I was like, so I could just ask questions back and forth about the potty training manual and make it as like easy as possible. And it
Oh
was it
wow!
was awesome. We had success.
So
Good luck.
LLMs help. Thank you. I'll report back. I'll do the same. I'm copying that workflow. Nice. What's one SEO task you never want to do manually again?
Mm. I mean, link building. I hate link building in general, and I haven't really done it in a while, but like anything that feels transaction based for value when it comes to links.
And how has AI helped with link building for you? Has it made it easier for you to sort of like automate link building or outreach for link building?
Nope. Nope. I think there's a certain humanity with building relationships or just building great content. I think it's important to send out emails without like asking for a link, which I guess technically still is link building, but like the old school scammy version is just doesn't do it for me.
I see. Fair enough. Same. Most overhyped. I'll leave it at that. Same. Most overhyped SEO trend in the AI era.
Overhyped AI trend. I don't know if it's overhyped, but just dangerous was like the early year or two where it was just like raw AI output as content, just like click it and I'm good without human editing, I think is dangerous and awful and irresponsible and immature and don't do it.
And I have a follow-up question that's not part of the rapid fire round. But so with your content generation for your company right now, are you guys you're making use, I'm assuming, of AI to generate your content? But like how does that workflow look like? How are you creating a piece of content while utilizing AI while still making sure that it's, human centric and has a human touch?
Yeah, I mean, so we are first off, we're very transparent, in terms of like we have two different service offerings because we understand that different businesses are sensitive to content and socially, like in some niches it doesn't make sense, in others it does. So we always have either a like pure human output or pure human content creation or a human in the loop. But in terms of the workflow, for us, the real key is around this concept of information gain is like, how can we through a comprehensive content brief, make sure that we are doing interviews with experts and infusing those insights into the content that's created. Like we're not saying just go out and do this topic. We're saying here are all of the resources. Here's all the interview transcripts that we've actually done. Start with an outline and then build piece by piece and edit as you go for those types of content. I think that it just shifts the investment from the content writing to the content editing and still depends heavily on journalistic skill sets.
So a bit of both. It depends. Nice.
Yes.
One AI feature or product you wish existed.
One AI. I just still want them to get better. I want to confidently know it's not going to hallucinate. I want to be able to create an app or an image exactly as I say. And so I think it's just an improvement on existing tools to the extent that it can do exactly what I intend and it's not messy or blurry, which may or may not be the case, but we're not there yet.
You see, so not like a separate tool. You just want ChatGPT or whatever your most preferred LLM to kind of provide you with trustworthy information and like
Yeah.
actually execute. Okay, nice. So you want progress, like
Yes.
perfection. You want
Don't
perfection.
we all want progress, Vaenisaa?
Yes, we do. We do. Most underrated AI use case in SEO right now.
Underrated classification. I think, there's a lot of value in using AI to classify all different types of content. And I don't think people understand how to do it. It's one of the best use cases because it's the whole concept of machine learning. Classification needs to be utilized more.
And do you use any separate tools for classification, or do you have your own sort of like? Have you built your own?
I mean, the only like we build a lot in-house. I'm not a developer myself, so like we do build tools in-house for the relevance engineering, for identifying the cosine similarity, all the jargony stuff. But I like ChatGPT for Sheets to do classification where it's just in Google Sheets and I'll have like an entire spreadsheet and I'll be able to write a prompt and then just kind of double click and have it execute all the way down is really effective.
Nice. Yeah, ChatGPT is great for classification, to be fair. It's what it's built for initially, right? Nice.
Mhm.
Favorite tool you didn't expect to love?
Favorite tool Notebook LM, actually. You hear some of these podcasts and it's so ridiculous and you can't help laugh at it, but it also does a really good job of simplifying hard concepts in a ridiculous podcast format.
I need to listen to the one that you put out. I've had a
On top of every chapter, check them.
nice. Yeah, no, because I think it's great. It makes it more accessible and like, even though it can be funny, but it's also super useful in terms of like synthesizing that information and like I think I had a friend who was reading out chapters of books, so making summaries of a favorite book, and they were making use of Notebook LLM and published it somewhere just for the fun of it. So
That's
it's
awesome.
it's it's great to play around with.
Uh,
Build or buy your own AI workflow or AI workflows.
nope, nope. Doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Build and buy. I build them when I need to. I buy them when I need to.
Nice. Finally, one word to describe the future of SEO.
Exciting. I love it.
Awesome. Garrett, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. I would like to ask, how can the people find you? You obviously work at iPullRank and you're quite a notable voice on LinkedIn, a voice of reason and trustworthiness in the space of SEO. But please feel free to plug yourself further.
First off, thank you for having me. This is so much like I love you're such a good host. This is such a good conversation. And I love this. I'm excited to watch episodes of these. But yeah, find me online, iPullRank.com, iPullRank.com. And I'm mostly a LinkedIn guy. Like I was like a Twitter X person and I'm still there from time to time, but it's hard. It's
I
hard
feel
to
like the
do it.
conversations in SEO have moved to LinkedIn. It's now
Yeah.
becoming a great like place for content for to hear from influencers in any space actually of like
Yeah.
from marketing to finance, content creation across all industries. Like it's great. Like, and I think it's because people have to be a bit professional on that platform, so it
You are
filters
yourself.
out
Your
a lot of
name's out there. Yeah.
you have to be accountable. You can't just be, going rogue and saying random stuff. Like people tend to like
Oh,
what
come
happens with
on. Yeah,
Twitter
that doesn't stop some people. No,
but it gets filtered out a bit, better and like
I agree.
yeah. So it's a nice space. Like I enjoy LinkedIn now,
Me too. Me too. Me too. It's been a transition, but I really do. They're good conversations. You're absolutely right.
Awesome. Thanks, Garrett.